Well, I knew that I was going to be doing it probably about 2 to 2.5 years before we actually shot, so I had a little while to prepare. But I think the day after I finished shooting Frost Nixon in LA, I was in a motel room and I got my laptop out and my very first bit of research for Brian Clough was putting his name into the YouTube search engine, and the very first thing that came up was Brian Clough being interviewed on TV by David Frost, bizarrely. And it was like, wow, that's who I've just played, that's who I'm going to play. And that began a process of research, which sort of, for all the real life characters that I played, is basically the same process, which is just, I mean, I had a longer time with this one, and I did little bits all the way through, but it was about 3 or 4 months of quite solid sort of work on it before we started shooting. And it's just watching everything I can watch and reading everything I can read and talking to people. And I went off on a little tangent of kind of looking into cult leaders, because the more I found out about how Clough worked with teams, players, the more it struck me that it was similar to a cult leader. So I did a little bit of that. And films that he was really into, like one of his favourite films was Saturday Night, Sunday Morning with Albert Finney. And obviously you can see there's a bit of, you know, I'm from the north and fuck you, like Albert Finney in that. And so, you know, I'll watch films that he liked and read books and whatever. And that sort of goes on and on and on. And I work with a lady called Penny Dyer on all the films that I do, who ostensibly we work on the voice, but it sort of goes far beyond that. And she's sort of become indispensable really to the way I work, in that we talk about the sort of external stuff, but only in so much as it highlights what's going on internally for the character. And so she becomes like a sort of sounding board for me, and we develop a lot of stuff early on like that. And ultimately it's to get to the point of filming where I don't have to think about how like this person I am. I want to be able to get to the point where I'm in a scene with someone and it's just like I'm playing me. It's just that I've changed me into somebody else by that point, so that it's just I can react spontaneously in the moment. And if we're doing scenes and, you know, Tom might have said, you know, we need something at the beginning of this scene and something at the end of it, then I can immediately, you know, bring something up from the files to what a football manager must feel. In fact, Brian used to say that the game is won or lost on Monday morning, not on Saturday afternoon. It's the work you do in the week that matters. It means bugger all what you do on the actual day, which is why sometimes he wouldn't even sit in the, you know, the way we have him, he's sitting in the dugout, but by the time he got to Forest, he wouldn't even sit in the dugout, he'd sit up in the stand if he turned up at all, because there was nothing he could do about it. Well, there was certainly something incredibly self-destructive about Brian, obviously, and I think the fact that his alcoholism got worse and worse, inevitably, and I think part of what addiction can do, from looking into it, is that it turns your best qualities against you, eventually. So the very qualities, as you say, that made him great, his ability to be, well, the fact that he was obsessive about this sport and about football, and that sort of passion, that drive, that ambition, like the scene that we do when Tim Spaller's Peter Taylor is in the hospital bed and he sort of says, you know, you've got this thing in you and this ambition, this mad ambition. Sometimes it's good, it's a good energy and it makes things happen, but other times it takes everything away from you that you care about in your life. And, you know, that's it in a nutshell, really, that he, I think a combination of things. Brian, I mean, for me, it was always central to what I was doing in the film and the character, and certainly what David Peace wrote in the novel, that the injury. Clough was a prolific goal scorer, a really great football player, and his career was cut short by an injury that he sustained against Bury. This is the ridiculous amount of facts that I now know about this man. And the fact that he was stopped from doing what he wanted to do, management was always second best to actually going out there and scoring the goals himself. The combination of that and feeling how badly he felt he was treated by the football management after that, sort of combined to make it, in the novel, Peace has Clough say, and from then on I lived my life as revenge. And so you can see that in his battles with chairman, in his battles with the Brass and Buttons Brigade, in that kind of arrogance, that drive to beat them down, is a desire for revenge. You know, all the frustration, all the anger, all the hurt and all the pain from being stopped from doing what you'd love, he just channeled it, first of all, into management generally, and in our film channels it against Don Revie specifically. I've directed a couple of plays, not many, just a few, and I remember the feeling of sitting in the audience, watching the actors doing the play, and there's absolutely nothing I could do about it. If they were doing stuff that I didn't want them to do, I couldn't stand up and go stop. And that feeling of just utter kind of powerlessness and futility and impotence was, I guess, similar to what a football manager must feel. In fact, Brian used to say that the game is won or lost on Monday morning, not on Saturday afternoon. It's the work you do in the week that matters. It means bugger all what you do on the actual day, which is why sometimes he wouldn't even sit in the, you know, the way we have him, he's sitting in the dugout, but by the time he got to Forest, he wouldn't even sit in the dugout, he'd sit up in the stand if he turned up at all, because there was nothing he could do about it.